Backslide by Black K. Cat. Chapter 6. Confrontation. The mission, perhaps predictably, goes to hell without so much as a pause to breathe. With a low snarl, Kurama blocks a clone's axe strike with his sword and whirls past too quick to catch, beheading it with a single easy stroke. Sasuke's katana, surrendered when he finally became too ill to use it, sings as it cuts through the air. It's not Kusanagi, broken long ago, nor is it anything incredibly special, but it's Sasuke's, well cared for and crafted by a master, with Kurama's own seals in the metal itself. The clone turns back to water with a splash, and Kurama hurtles forward, taking out the nin locked in combat with Raido. Raido doesn't thank him, and Kurama doesn't wait for thanks. This is a mission, not a staged tournament, and Konoha Shinobi are famous for their teamwork for reasons just like this. Any enemy shinobi going into a fight with Konoha knows that rather than one-on-one matches, like they might face against another village, with Konoha it's always going to be a melee, and rarely in their favor. Get him up! Raido calls, evading a doton jutsu and lunging forward, the black blade of his poisoned sword a shadow in the half-light beneath the trees. Kurama ducks a kunai that passes close enough for him to feel it skim his hair, then throws one of his own with the addition of an exploding tag. The force of it, modified and amplified by the seals Kurama uses to make them himself, shakes the forest and gives Kurama time to dart back to his team's leader's side. Laying traps, he answers, even as he pulls a square of paper from the inside pocket of his jonin vest. They've got reinforcements headed our direction, maybe 4 minutes out. Unknown numbers approaching from the southeast. Hell, Raido mutters and then twists to the side, catching a descending kunai on his sword. He kicks his attacker, spins to the side, and Kurama meets the enemy nin with bared teeth and a snarl, slamming one of the papers into the woman's chest. There's a crackle of violet light, a scream, and then the woman drops like a stone. Go! The Tokujo orders. I can hold them off until Genma's done. Meet at point D at noon. Kurama bites back the instinctive protest against abandoning a comrade, but he's been a shinobi long enough to know a sound strategy when it's presented to him. These nin are after the scroll, having clearly been hired to retrieve it, and that means they're after him. While running will doubtless tell them exactly who's carrying the item, it's the best choice. Kurama is fast and skilled, and dividing their forces will give Raido and Genma the edge they need to win quickly. Letting out a short, sharp breath, Kurama dips his head. Right! Make sure you get there, he growls, sliding his katana back into its sheath and leaps forward in a blur of speed. He's not quite the yellow Flash. Not yet. But when he tries, there are few in any time who can catch him. The Kyuubi no Kitsune always knew how to run, at the very least. They're on the very border of fire country, practically shoulder to shoulder with lightning, and it's far from comfortable. The peace is uneasy at best, bought with death and underhanded dealings, and there's no peace at all when their shinobi villages hired to outwit each other. Kurama is very careful to keep to his side of the border as he runs, marking it in his mind and maintaining his distance. Behind him, nowhere near as swift through the trees as he is, are the other nin. They're making enough noise to alert even the most brain-dead academy student, and Kurama mentally scoffs. Fire country forests are special, certainly, but they're hardly unique, and that level of noise is simply an embarrassment. He leaves traps as he goes, seals triggered by proximity, and quickly set tripwires with exploding tags. Anything he could throw down on the fly. As much as he hates it, this is exactly the type of situation he's experienced with running and fighting and avoiding pursuers. At one time, maybe he would have rejected such an idea, stood and fought and died for it. But Madara's forces outnumbered them by a huge amount, always, and all the remnants of Konoha quickly learned that sometimes retreat and flight truly were the best options. Ahead of him, there's a faint spark of chakra, a small flicker of light, and Kurama narrows his eyes. He's fairly familiar with the jutsus that Raido and Genma use, but that wasn't them. They're also a good 7 minutes behind him, even moving fast, and they'd have had to already have taken their opponents out. There's no doubt as to their skills, no question that they both have earned the Anbu tattoos on their shoulders many times over. But even for the pair of them, that's pushing things. So, enemy then. Kurama takes a breath and launches himself forward out of the trees. He lands at a run, up and moving before his pursuers can even register the change, and takes advantage of their sudden rush to get to the ground to flick his hands up to what is still, even after so long, his most familiar seal. In a heartbeat, there are 5 of them, and the 4 clones split off without hesitation, falling into ready stances even as he increases the distance between them. These enemy nin are chunin, maybe a jonin, 2 at most, mixed in, and 4 clones are enough to handle that. Were he any good at Genjutsu, this would be the perfect time for a chameleon jutsu, but even the addition of the Kyuubi no Kitsune's chakra and skill can't make up for his own lack in that area. Kurama curses under his breath and leaps forward as the ground gives way, hands reaching up to grab him. Another 4 quick signs, and he hisses, "Doton! Compression!" With a groaning rumble, the earth collapses in on the shinobi beneath the surface, and Kurama hooks a hand around a thick branch, kicks off the tree, and flips back to the ground. There's someone ahead of him. His sensitive ears can pick out the rasp of breath, but it sounds quick and panicked. Young, Kurama thinks, his heart clenching, but he grits his teeth and draws Sasuke's katana again. Ginkaze, Sasuke had always called it, no matter how much Kurama mocked him for his lack of imagination. But thinking of Sasuke, still an ache, still a fierce, sharp regret right now is... No. He doesn't want to kill the Chunin in the bushes, likely only recently promoted, but they're both shinobi on a mission, both with a duty to carry out. Kurama learned a lot about duty since Madara returned. "I won't ask you to let me pass," he says, "but I don't want to fight you." The breathing catches, just faintly, and there's a slight, soft hiss of a weapon being drawn. Kurama sets his feet and steadies himself just in time for the boy in the bushes to come charging out. He's clumsy with his wakizashi, though, too slow to even begin to match Kurama, who would have been Akage in another life had things turned out better. Kurama sidesteps, half-turns, and cracks the hilt of Ginkaze into the back of the boy's skull. Too soft to be a killing blow, if only just. Mercy is something they still have time for here, and Kurama loves with a tearing, wrenching ache that he no longer has to kill those who cross his path. Perhaps doing so would be better, smarter, but Kurama has never been like that unless forced to be. Kurama spares half an instant to glance back over his shoulder, even as a surge of fire rises above the treetops. He smiles faintly, fondly, because for someone so level-headed, Genma has always been suspiciously fond of katon jutsus. Then, with a short sigh, he slips Ginkaze back into its sheath and bounds up into the branches. "Should have been a freaking A rank, not a B," Genma mutters, leaning back against the wide bole of a tree as he tries to control his breathing. Next to him, Raido nods, swiping the back of his hand over his brow. "Trade treaty from a mining town," he says with a shrug. "Should have expected it. These missions always suck." Conceding the point with a snort, Genma checks the position of the sun and murmurs, "About noon." The tone is non-committal, but Raido's been his partner for long enough to hear the threat of concern in the man's voice, well buried as it is. For his part, though, Raido can't quite bring himself to worry. Uzumaki Kurama seems level-headed, skilled, and entirely competent, without the ego a lot of good shinobi get. Beyond that, he brought in several incredibly infamous missing-nin, and that's impressive. He's fast, too, and even if he took the circuitous route to throw off his pursuers, he'd likely be arriving soon. And, as if summoned by the thought, a shape drops through the branches to land lightly on the ground in front of them, hardly even stirring the leaves. As he rises, Raido takes a quick inventory and is unsurprised by the lack of wounds. Kurama looks a bit ruffled, and there are leaves and twigs in his now loose hair, but beyond that, Raido can't see any damage. "The scroll?" he asks, because his first priority has to be the mission, regardless of how much he wants to make sure he's not missing anything. Kurama smiles at him, bright and entirely cheerful, and dips his head. "Delivered, along with a warning about how much opposition we faced," he answered. "You're both all right?" "A little singed," Genma acknowledges without care, "but we've been worse." Raido barely restrains the urge to roll his eyes. "We wouldn't be singed if you hadn't set off your own trap. It got them, didn't it?" Don't stress so much, Rai. You're gonna go bald. And then I'll have to get myself a better looking sugar daddy. Quite certain that his skin is approximately the same shade as Kurama's hair now, Raito clamps down on the urge to splutter and just slaps his hands over his face. He's a private person! And Genma is the walking, talking definition of an overshare. 2 years, he says, not caring if it comes out muffled and all but inaudible. Genma, I am 2 years older than you! Stop that! Quiet laughter cuts the argument off before it can progress further, and Raito drops his hands to see that Kurama is turned away from them, shoulders shaking, head bowed, so that his long hair curtains his face. The sound is unmistakable, though. Sweet and warm and full, and Raito smiles in spite of himself. It's not that Kurama is slow to laugh, exactly. But he can seem so melancholy at times that each bout of mirth somehow feels like a victory. Judging by the curve of Genma's lips and the tilt of his brows, he feels the same. Sorry. Kurama gasps, face still hidden. It's just... You sound like... And people say shinobi suck at being married. Raito has the rare pleasure of watching Genma gape, momentarily speechless, and laughs himself. If I've managed to survive those 3 chicks he's raised for this long, I think I deserve a better title than husband, he says dryly. Maybe saint. One of them alone would give a man gray hair to rival Kakashi's. Who the hell says you're the husband? Genma demands, and there's a flush high up on his sharp cheekbones. Chicks? Kurama asks at the same moment. Raito, almost gleeful at finally getting one back at his partner, gives Genma an innocent smile. Well, I was assuming you were the wife, given your skills at housework, Gen. I'm sorry, was I stereotyping? Genma splutters and Raito looks over at the redhead, who's still watching in amusement. After the Kyuubi, there were a lot of orphans in the village, he explains. Genma took in Kotetsu, Izumo, and Iruka to look after whenever he wasn't on a mission. All 3 of them are monsters, though Izumo hides it better than most. Before Kurama can answer, though, a pair of long arms wind around Raito's neck, and Genma all but drapes himself over his side. Screw you, the younger man growls. I'll be the best damn wife you ever had, bastard. Let's go home, and I'll show you. Raito goes brilliant red just as the lash buzz was finally fading, and Kurama is laughing again. Genma grins in triumph, sharp and wicked, and only protests a little when Raito whacks him around the head in desperate, embarrassed revenge. They return to the village to the sight of well-ordered chaos, and share a glance between them. Anbu are out and visible patrolling the walls, and where there are normally only 2 chunin manning any one gate, 2 chunin and 2 jonin greet them as they approach. Raito-san, Genma-san, Uzuki Yugao says, rising to her feet and inclining her head. Hatake is at her back, but his eyes are on the forest still, not allowing himself to be distracted by the returning team. You're back a little late. Raito waves a weary hand in acknowledgement. By 3 days, he agrees. The opposing side hired Kumo Nin. What's happening here? Yugao's eyes narrow faintly, but she answers. One of the academy instructors turned traitor the night before last. He tried to convince one of the students that failed to steal a Kinjutsu scroll for him. The Hokage hasn't released the details yet, but he was stopped, and all shinobi forces above genin have been put on alert in case he wasn't working alone. Genma whistles lowly. Wow, hell of a thing to do. The kid okay? Yugao dips her head in a short, sharp nod, even as she checks their mission scroll off and waves them through the gate. He's fine, last I heard. A little shaken up, but that's entirely understandable for a student. There's true, if faint concern in her voice, and Kurama spares her a quick smile as he follows his teammates into the village. For all that the civilians were always antagonistic with their glares and whispers, for the most part the shinobi of Konoha were more understanding of life as a Jinchuriki. It's nice to see that carries over. I'll turn in the report, Raito volunteers with a weary smile, waving Genma and Kurama off as they come to an intersection of the streets. You guys are dismissed. Thank you. Genma looks at him for a moment and then rolls his eyes. I'll pick up lunch, he says. We're all hungry and filthy, and we've been running since yesterday. What do you want, Rai? Raido favors him with a quick smile. Ichiraku? He suggests. Done. Genma reaches out quick as a snake and snags Kurama's arm as he makes to disappear. Oh no, I don't think so, Kurama-san. You're going to eat if I have to force feed you. March! Kurama takes one look at the mother-hen expression his new friend is wearing, rolls his eyes, and marches. Now I understand why Raido calls them your chicks, he mutters. If you start making head noises like Aoba does, I'll string you up by your ankles in the forest of death, Genma threatens, steering him toward the familiar stand. After a quick glance to make sure Kurama is walking obediently, he releases him and ducks under the awning. Kurama hears him calling a cheerful greeting to Teuchi and is just about to follow when someone bursts out of the stall and collides with him, nearly knocking him over. Yo! A loud voice cries, and Kurama blinks down at the figure pointing at his face, then at the bright blonde head almost level with his elbow. Me, he says agreeably. Then he reaches out, ignoring the boy's stiffening, and carefully ruffles his hair. Those were some good pranks, kid, he says warmly. The one with the glue is especially inspired. There's a long moment of silence as Naruto stares at him, jaw gaping and blue eyes stunned. Then he puffs himself up like a rooster and beams. I almost got you, he crows. I know I did, because the future Hokage is awesome at everything. Kurama chuckles softly. Future Hokage? He asks. The old man better watch out then. He reaches out and taps the worn hitayate Naruto is wearing. Genin is a good start. Naruto grins widely at him, and Kurama feels a slight pang as he remembers being this boisterous and innocent. I'll make Jonin in a year, he boasts. Believe it! And who are you, so that I know our future Hokage's name? Kurama asks. This is as good an opening as he'll ever be handed. A random enough chance that even the Saindame won't see anything suspicious about it. Uzumaki Naruto, Genin of Kanaha! The boy declares proudly, and Kurama makes himself go very, very still. How interesting, he hears himself say from a distance, because this is it. This is the beginning of the change. Yes, Akatsuki is already gone, and Nagato's eyes are no longer a threat, but this is the real change, the one that will show the most in Kurama's little double. How very, very interesting. Because, you see, my name is Uzumaki Kurama.